All right, here is our Illustrator logo tutorial series, and this is going to be a fun call-out logo tutorial. And this is kind of what it's going to look like. There is a little help sheet out there that has this information, but I'm going to walk you through it so that you can learn more about how to use certain features of Illustrator. I'm going to start by creating a new document, and for the purposes of this, I'm just going to make it a square, 600 by 600. And there we go. I've got a square document. Now, one thing to note is, depending on your computer, it may come up looking a certain way. I don't like this look. This is in the video kind of, you can see like the video guidelines, and you can also see the background, the transparent background. So I'm going to click here on Hide Transparency Grid because I just don't dig it. And of course you could also get rid of these rulers and so forth if you don't want to look at the rulers. I'm going to hide the video rulers under the rulers as well. So there we go. Now I've got just a basic rectangle here, or square. So what we're going to start with is creating the call out. We're going to do all this stuff from scratch. So we're not going to go find a shape that's already made. We're going to create it ourselves. The first thing we're going to start with is a rounded rectangle. You're going to click and hold the rectangle tool to locate the rounded rectangle. For our purposes, just so we don't get confused with the background, let's go ahead and make this a color. What color doesn't really matter. I'm going to do without a stroke for the moment so that there's no border around it. All right, so I'm going to click and drag to create my rounded rectangle. Now, it's not rounded enough for me, so before I let go, over on your keyboard, if you press the up arrow, notice it's going to round that more. If you press the down arrow, it's going to go the other direction. And if you press left or right, it's going to jump all the way to rectangle or all the way to oval. So you can use the up and down and over arrows to get it to be however rounded you want it to be. This is pretty good for me. So I'm going to go with this. You make it about as big as you can. We got to put a place at the bottom for the call out triangle part. But all right, there we go. Now I'm going to take my black selection tool and just position it here in the middle. And there is a little align button that you can click here. So if you wanted to align it completely to the center, you could align to the horizontal and vertical centers. Notice that doesn't do anything unless you tell it to align it to the artboard, because that's what your big white thing is. So I'm going to click align to artboard, and then if I were to do this, it would center it on both. Now I don't care about it being centered down there because I'm going to put something below it, but that's how you do that. All right, next instruction, we're going to use the rectangle tool. So I'm going to take the plain rectangle tool. We're just going to draw a tall rectangle like so. No really right or wrong way to do this. But we're going to go to the pen tool here. And the pen tool has a delete anchor point tool. I could also just press the minus sign while I'm on the pen tool and it would do the same thing. But I'm going to go on delete anchor point, and we're just going to delete one of the corners. It does not matter what corner you want to delete. I'm going to delete this one up here, but probably down here would make more sense, to be honest. But I'm going to delete this one. So now I have sort of the other part of my call out, the triangle part. I'm going to click back on my black selection arrow and then point to the outside edges to rotate, and then you can rotate it around. If you need to flip it, just grab it and go inside out here, and you can flip it around. And you're just going to position it however you want it to pop out of your call out. And you can make this look different. You don't have to make it look just like this. But this is the way I'm going with it, okay? Now, we are going to select both of these shapes because right now they're two independent shapes. We want to merge them into one. And the reason we're not going to just group them, because technically I could just take my black arrow, draw around them, right-click and group them, and then they would move as one. But if I were to go add a border around this, I'm just going to add a stroke. It adds a stroke around both shapes, see? And that's totally not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that stroke again. And I'm going to ungroup these. So what you're going to do instead is to select both of them. Again, you can draw around it like this, or you can click on one, hold shift, and click on the other one. Now they're both selected. And we're going to use the ShapeBuilder. Now you can use the Pathfinder or the ShapeBuilder. In this case, the ShapeBuilder is real quick, but Pathfinder would be as well. ShapeBuilder's right here. I'm going to click ShapeBuilder tool, and then you're just going to drag. It'll turn gray as you drag over them. You're just going to drag all the way across to turn it all, to merge it all. So drag through, and bam, there we go. That's super simple. So that's our ShapeBuilder. Now we're going to get our text for this. We're going to put our name in here and cut it out of the shape. So you're going to grab your type tool. I don't suggest typing on top of stuff. I like to do it over to the side and then move it. For that matter, you could even pick up and move this first, kind of out of the way for a minute while you work on the text. So I'm just going to click one time, and I'm going to type in my name. My first name's Tanya, so I'm going to type in Tanya. I've already downloaded a font for this, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on this. You could change the font size, or you could just click and drag it, which is really nice that you can just do that in Illustrator. But I need to find the particular font that I need for this. So to get back into my font box, grab back on my T, double click, and then here where it has my font, I can choose what font that I want. Now I downloaded one, I think, called Neuronomicon because I kind of liked it. So I'm going to click on that one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use each of these letters inside this shape. However, they are text right now. And I need them to be shapes because to use the shape builder and stuff, shapes play with shapes. They don't play with text. So I'm going to right click my text and create outlines, which basically just turns text into shapes, right? So I'm going to click create outlines. Now it doesn't really look a lot different, but notice that there's little blue outlines around these. So now they are shapes. They're just grouped shapes. So I'm going to right click and ungroup, and they don't look ungrouped because I'm still clicked on them all. But if I click off of it with my black arrow and click on one, now it's its own little thing, right? All right, I'm going to scoot this back over here for a minute. And I'm going to start dragging these shapes into position. Now we're using them to punch out of here. And I also know I'm going to do my other name, my second name, my last name, down at the bottom. You can change these shapes however you want. So, if I want the T to be really big, I might kind of put it here like so. You can rotate them around. Notice, of course, this is going to chop out, but that's what I'm wanting it to do. All right, so then I'm going to put my T here, maybe my O here, and I don't want it to go all the way to the top. I'm going to put my N, maybe size this one up. And you could connect them too if you wanted to connect your shapes. That's totally fine too, however you want to do it. So I could have this kind of sticking out of the top if I wanted to, or I can make it taller. And then you just continue on, getting your shapes to look how you want. Again, if you want to overlap your shapes, go for it. Just want to get whatever kind of look and feel you're after. All right. And I think it's cool to go outside the border of the shape every now and then just because it kind of adds a neat effect. So I'm going to take my A and put my A here. And there we go. I'm not like super digging this shape here, but it's going to be fine. All right, so once you have your main layout here, you've got these, we've got to punch these out, okay? And we can use that shape builder. That's really the easiest way to do it. But before you do that, you really need to make sure these shapes are the shape you want them to be. So if you needed to modify anything, you could take your white arrow tool and you could click on things and you could move them. Like if I wanted to pull this corner out, I could zoom up here, take that white arrow tool, grab a hold of this anchor point, click on it once, and then click on it again and pull it out. If it's got weird little lines here and I want to get rid of something, remember, we can go to that pen minus. We can get rid of an anchor. I can get rid of multiple anchors if I want to. Okay, so if there are things that you want to change, do that first and, get it like you want it to be. There we go. And then once everything is settled, maybe I want my T to touch. So I'm going to come and click this one and we'll like make this guy hang out with this guy. Maybe I'll go again over here. But once you get it like you want, then we're ready to move on using that shape builder. Now we're using the shape builder differently. So before we used the shape builder to join the shapes. Now we're going to use the shape builder to punch out these shapes. So again, we have to select everything. Grab your selection tool, just draw a box around the whole thing. That selects everything. Then click on your shape builder. And again, you're going to drag across, but this time instead of on plus, because if we did plus, it just merged it all together, and that's going to look really weird at some point. That's going to happen. See, that's no good. So let me back up. All right, so let me select all these again, shape builder. And you're going to hold down the Alt key. The Alt is the shape builder on minus. And notice what that does. It minuses these out. I'm holding down Alt and clicking on each of my shapes. Now, if the shape goes beyond the border, then you're going to have to drag through to get that part, like so. Now, notice with this one, we have a problem. It's getting into that red area, so I need to make sure I don't touch that red area. Again, I'm holding down Alt. We're removing these areas. This is a little bitty place that made me get into the red area, so I'm going to zoom up closely before I use it here. Again, holding Alt, staying out of the red zone there. because we don't want to lose that part. Okay, there we go. It's all good to go. There's another couple little places that I missed. Again, I'm holding down Alt and on minus to do all these. And you'll want to zoom up close just to make sure it all works. All right, now technically, this is the thing. Your shapes have middles to them, these little middles. And we have to deal with those because they're not really part of the cutout. And you can kind of tell because if you select it and you go and you start modifying the stroke, not everything is getting connected in there. Okay, so what we have to do, again, I'm going to set this to none. What we have to do is we have to turn this into what's called a compound path. And a lot of times after you punch stuff out, things just aren't connected. Like really this piece is separate, right? So to make it still be part of the whole thing, we have to turn it into a compound path. I'm just going to select it all again. There is a keyboard shortcut for this. It's Control-8, but you go to Object, Compound Path, Make. See, it says Control-8. Now, when I do that, now it's all one path. And it's not like it's grouped. It's like it's actually the path, okay? And if I go and I start to stroke this now, see, we get this cool effect here. And I don't usually stroke that heavily, but I just wanted you to be able to see, okay? All right, so that's pretty cool. Now, we would repeat this process to do, like, your last name or whatever. I don't know that I have time to do the whole thing, but so I would put Skinner, that's my last name. And again, you can scale that up or do it however you wish. Once you get your letters situated, you're going to right click and create outlines again. You're going to right click and ungroup the letters so you can grab them individually. Then you're going to do whatever it is you need to do to make these be like you want them to be. This is a really ugly S for my Skinner. And again, I don't have, for the sake of time here on video, this is not going to be as pretty as I would maybe like for it to be. But anyhow, so you're going to do all of this stuff, get it all situated however you want it to be, rotate things around or whatever, and then you have to punch out your path again. So again, we're going to use that ShapeBuilder on minus to get rid of these areas. So select everything again. And remember, we made a compound path before we did all this. That's important because otherwise stuff starts disappearing. Promise. Okay, I'm holding down Alt, dragging across, just clicking on the ones that I don't have to drag across on. And then again, we would zoom up really close just to make sure we didn't miss any areas, especially for these edges. Oops, I lost the edge of my circle. Well, I think I need to. I had it hanging out, right? All right. Now, again, it's not a compound path. So once we do all of this, because it would be separate if we grabbed a hold of certain parts, you just want to make sure it's compound path again. So just select it all one more time and Control-8 to make it a compound path. And now it is a compound path. And you can tell because I got my fill back. Before I did that, this was like a bunch of question marks. Here, I'll even undo. See question marks? That means it's not a compound path, all of it. So Control-8 makes it a compound path. And then I can continue on. And the other items that are listed on there are to apply a gradient fill. And to do that, to add a gradient in the background, I'm going to use the gradient panel, which should be over here somewhere. And if you don't have yours, you go to Window, Gradient to do so. However, I find the easiest way is to go through swatches. So you click on swatches and go to the library book and go to gradients. And then there's some that are like preset already. So you can choose whichever ones you want. Let's say earth tones. And then I can choose a gradient of my choice, whatever one that I like. You can see here it is. And then to edit the gradient, pull up your gradient tool. You can change the way they mix. You can change the colors. You can like click on one of these and double click and then make it lighter or whatever and just adjust your gradient. If you don't like the way it's going, you can change those all here in the gradient tool. And then if you wanted to do anything additional, you would go to the appearance panel, Window Appearance. You can add other effects through here on the FX button. So like adding a drop shadow or a glow or something like that. You want to hit preview so you can actually see it. You wouldn't want it to be quite that much. But you can choose how to do any of those types of things as well. Once you get your logo as you wish for it to be, you're going to export it. File Export, Export As, and you're going to want to save it in PNG format. That's going to maintain that transparency so you can use it on just about anything. All right, and that's the first tutorial on creating a logo in Illustrator.